Good afternoon. Hi there. How are you? My name is Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you're watching the Rational Male 101, episode 35. Today's topic, the crying game, and I am joined by the godfather of the manosphere, the cult leader himself,
yes,
Rollo Tomasi, the Rational Male. Rollo, how you doing, buddy?
Great, man. It's a little hot here today, so decided
you don't
to take
know
my
what
shirt
hot
off.
is. You don't know what hot
Well, how hot is it in Tulsa right now? Isn't it like 110?
Well, with the heat index, it gets up there. It's probably, I don't know, maybe 96, 97 right now. But it's muggy. It is muggy.
I took the quad out this morning. I'm probably going to go take it out up at the top of the mountains here in the Sierras, but I got to wait till it cools off a little bit.
So we're going to be talking about how women use emotion, in this case, crying in particular,
sure,
to manipulate men. And I sent you a clip that we're going to play at the start here, and I'm going to sort of set this up for folks and explain who it is. It's a clip that was on Facebook. The lady's name is Erica Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
She is a state representative from Georgia, and she went on Facebook and told this horrific sob story that she was verbally assaulted in a grocery store, a public store, by a white man who told her that she was a lazy SOB and to go back to where she came from because she had too many items in the express lane. And she said her husband wasn't there to defend her because he's on active duty, serving the country. He's in the Navy, by the way. We can talk a little bit about that. And she also points out that she came from the USA. But I want to play this and talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about the politics. But guys, you need to watch this and look how convincing this is, because she's actually crying about something that didn't happen. That didn't happen certainly the way she laid it out. The whole story has fallen apart. But she is what I call a master manipulator. Not all women will do this, but every woman could if she wanted to. So without further ado, play the clip and then we'll comment.
All right, hang on one second. Let me switch over.
You know, I decided to go live because I'm very upset because people are getting really out of control with this white privilege stuff. I'm at the grocery store and I'm in the 10 aisle, the aisle that says 10 items or less. Yes, I have 15 items, but I'm 9 months pregnant and I can't stand up for long. And this white man comes up to me and says, "You lazy son of a bitch." He says, "You lazy son of a bitch. You need to go back where you came from." And he says that. I said, "Sir, you don't even know me. I'm not lazy. I'm 9 months pregnant." He says, "You're ignorant. You're ignorant." And I'm not. It hurt me so bad. I'm sorry, y'all, because everything in me wanted to just tell him who I am and how I know. But I couldn't get anything out. I could just tell him, "Please leave me alone, please." And my child is just sitting right there. He said, "Mama, why would he call you that? Why would he do that?" I can't even explain to her why he has so much hate in his heart.
Well, there you go.
All right, so a couple things here. First of all, the timing. Timing's everything. For those who haven't been following the news, there's 4 congresswomen, all women of color, and Trump got himself in some hot water last weekend about comments that were, well, they spun him into saying something he didn't say, but basically telling people to go back home. And the only one that it would have been applicable to is Omar, who's originally from Somalia. The rest of the congresswomen are all born in the States. But the timing here, if she had done this or told this story 5 or 6 weeks ago, it wouldn't have been as powerful. But right now, because of what's going on, they're blaming this on Trump, by the way. They're blaming this on Trump.
Yeah, timing is very suspect. But
so So when I'm watching this, all right, and I've been following something called fake hate crimes for the last at least 15 years, maybe 20. People like Michelle Malkin, she's written a book on it. John Leo at U.S. News and World Report had done a series of articles on fake hate crimes. And people go, well, why would they fake it? Well, it's all about coveted victim status. And we can get into that some other time. But I just rationally sitting back, looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, so it's 2019. This happened at Publix, all right? The only witness she presents is her daughter, 9-year-old daughter, who, I mean, if this was going to court or something, they're not going to put her on the stand. She's not going to be a reliable witness. She's going to say whatever mommy told her. But she went through the 10 items or less lines. So there has to be some witnesses. There has to be a cashier, right? Why isn't there any cell phone video? Why isn't there any, their security system video, anything like that to back this up? Who is this white guy? I want to know who this white guy is. If this actually went down the way she said it is, I want to get the white guy myself, right?
Right.
And so since that originally came out, the story's changed in a number of ways. And one of the TV stations in her the city where she lives has actually requested from Publix the security cam video to see who was there, get witnesses, things like that. This guy actually went back to talk to Publix, and he's going to be filing a police report against her. And when you see this guy, he's about half the size of her. I thought it was Bagel Boy again. Remember the 5-footer?
Yeah.
And there's just so much to unpack here. But what's amazing is if you didn't know anything else and you just saw this, okay, and this works on guys in particular. Mm-hmm. We have like a knee-jerk reaction when we see a woman or even a child crying. Mm-hmm. We intuitively, it's in our hard drive. It's encoded. Yep. We intuitively want to come to their help. And when we see a woman cry, here's the other thing. We stop thinking rationally. We stop thinking like men, and we get sucked into the vortex, and we start thinking emotionally like a woman. And that's exactly what she wanted us to do. So talk a little bit about what you saw, what you see going on there.
Sure. Well, I mean, whenever you start to see crying, whenever you start to see emotional, like it seems like for guys, when a woman cries or when a woman is like kind of flying off the handle, or if she's acting really bitchy, or she's just screaming at you, we tend to think of this as a true signal that when a woman does something like that, she must have been brought to it in some way. There had to be, like, no woman would ever make up anything like that, right? We would, that's the way we want to think. And we've been thinking like that for a very long time, all prior to us having the internet, all prior to us having, a video camera in our pocket whenever something like this happens, and all prior to us being able to compare notes and objectively look at what's happening in this case. So we want to believe that emotional, that emoting, that screaming, that crying, it doesn't have to be screaming. I mean, it could be just crying or just whatever. We want to think that is a true signal, because remember what we talked about before was that women communicate covertly, men communicate overtly. And when a woman communicates overtly, when she crosses over into crying, into overt expressions of emotion, we think as men that because women are usually covert, or because women are usually one way, when they become the other way, that the only thing that could possibly have motivated them to that emotion is a true signal. There had to be something that actually happened for her to, and that's what people do. When they see this, if you looked at the responses in the chats for when she was doing this, she's like, everybody, and instantly, no one questions it. Absolutely zero question, absolutely zero critical thought, absolutely 0% reasoning in this. Like nobody's, I think we're starting to get to a point where maybe we're going to start questioning these things. But when it comes to women, we are far more apt to believe her. Now, a lot of people, when we were doing a little bit of research for this story right here, a lot of people are saying that this is the next sort of step in the evolution of like the Jussie Smollett, boy who cried wolf, right? The boy who made up this stuff. And of course, he's homosexual, and it was some big burly white guys that were going to beat him up and put a noose around his neck. And
they weren't really white.
Yeah, well, what? Yeah, exactly. What? See, here's and you're right. It's the victim Olympics because there's a certain amount of capital that goes along with being a victim, and when we look at it from from Jussie Smollett's, as a male, we're a little bit more skeptical of that. We're
Yes.
going to go, did this really happen? Did we not? But when a woman is crying and a woman pulls the same kind of thing, that it just because she has that, being a female, she's pregnant, she's got all of these qualifiers that go along with it.
She has triple protection. First of all, she's a woman. Okay. She is a woman of color, and she is a woman of color that is 9 months pregnant.
So here's the thing: is when we as men pick up on that. I've had guys from I think it was in India. I've had guys from India send me stories about how a guy was attacked, beat up, and killed because a woman made an emotional appeal to her family or whatever, saying that guy had raped her.
Yes.
With all of those the same kind of emotional appeal, the same kind of crying and everything else, and basically wanted the guy dead because he pretty much just broke up with her.
She made it up though, and they killed the guy, right?
Then 10 guys believe. You don't even have to have 10 guys. You get like 2 or 3 guys, and they believe that and they buy into that, and suddenly you get that male protector dynamic. And that's where I wanted to go with this, because that's the first place I think we need to stop in the emotional victim Olympics here, is that if you can make those appeals, men are far more willing to believe the emotional appeals of a woman than they are for a man. And that's where we get like the difference between Jussie Smollett and this woman right here. Is we got a guy, and so men, if you want a good example of burden of performance, this is what I'm talking, or this is part of what I'm talking about when it comes to burden of performance. That guy has to have some sort of reputation, have some kind of like integrity or some sort of believability, because if it's just an average guy on the street, nobody's going to believe that, or maybe they'll believe him, but they'll second guess. In the back of their head, they'll be wondering what's going on with this guy. Because when men are in a position where they must believe other men, it's based on merit. And so there's no protector dynamic between like a man and a man. Like, I don't feel like I got to go and protect this guy. In fact, whenever we see a man being beat up by a woman or being berated by a woman, we are far less likely to call the cops, or it takes us a lot longer to call the cops. And like you said, we've done the research on this. We've seen the ABC video about how they switch the roles, where if it's a woman that's being berated at a park bench in public, the cops are called within like 5 or 10 minutes of people observing them. But if it's a woman beating up on a guy and berating that guy and shaking that guy, they might not ever call, or might not ever say, something, hey, we got a domestic situation going on here, because we don't think of men in terms of like, we want to have an emotional connection with that guy. We think that guy probably deserved it. That guy did something where, I wouldn't want to be that guy. We're thinking in those terms because we think in terms of merit. Whereas for women, we give them the benefit of the doubt. They're all because they're the weaker sex, because eggs are expensive and sperm is cheap. We give them the benefit of the doubt, and we want to protect that. We want to protect the woman. And so we're far more likely to believe her, and especially if she's having an emotional outburst. And most guys don't know what to do with that. And we want to console that person. And it's not in our nature, because of that protector dynamic, to have any kind of skepticism about it, right? To have any kind of critical thought, because something switches off in our brains because of our mental firmware that we want to believe that. And so if she's crying, she says, "Oh, he raped me," we're going to go out there, we're going to try to kill that guy. We're not going to, like, we're at a point right now, I think in our past, like say in like the Old Testament days, or in the days where patriarchy, the real patriarchy, was actually a thing. I think it was. And some Muslims are going to correct me here, but I think that it takes like a woman's like story has to be corroborated by like 2 or 3 people, whereas if it was one man, his story stands. Whereas if it's a woman, then it takes like 2 or 3 women to corroborate the same kind of story. If it's like a he said, she said kind of thing, and that I believe that's in the Quran. I'm not sure, but that's what I'm talking about here is like, there used to be a time in like human culture and in our history where men knew better than to take a woman's, like, believe all women, right? But to take a woman's like opinion or whatever her take was, her emotional take, as something that we should automatically believe, right? We have the hashtag believe all women. And when Kavanaugh came out, that whole thing went on with the Supreme Court, and we go into this kangaroo court and all that. There was a time where that never would have happened because men we were like, okay, this is the opinion of a woman, and we're just kind of like, okay, maybe she's right, but let's go and do our due diligence. Now we won't even do that because we fall into that emotionalism. And just like Dr. Piper was saying, we're at a time now where it's always feels before reals. We're so ready to believe women because we now live in a feminine primary social order that's part of that. We want to believe whatever they have to say. So if a woman says she was raped, she was raped. If a woman says she was berated at Publix by a guy, and for what? For 5 items in a grocery store line, we're very, very quick to believe that. Why are we so quick to believe that? Because our thought process, our belief process is based not on skepticism. Because most men, if they're going to hear something like that back in the day, in the old social contract, in the days when a woman's opinion was a third of what one man's opinion would have been, men were more skeptical of that because we understood, we learned really the emotional nature of women, and we learned to say, okay, my rational nature supersedes your emotional nature. So I'm going to take what you said with a grain of salt, and I'm going to go verify that.
It's the old Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
Trust but verify. We used to do that. We don't do that anymore because we're in a feminine primary social order.
I have learned over the years, it just even goes back to my teaching days. When a girl tells you a story, you never take it at face value. You've got to verify, independently verified, even with my own daughters. They're recounting, an incident at school. When I hear from others that were there, it's not necessarily, and I'm not saying they're lying, it's not necessarily the total picture. It's almost like they have a way of seeing things simply from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but this lady here, and by the way, when you see her next to this guy, who I told you reminded me of Bagel Boy, she would, in this day and age, you got to be pretty ballsy to go up to a black woman and shoot your mouth up and say the things that he or she claimed he said, because you would get your ass beat.
Yeah.
And there would be people that would help her beat your ass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And just the size differential alone is, it pushes the whole thing. The guy, by the way, the guy's not white. He brings this up when they're both on screen being interviewed by the TV station. Mm-hmm. He says, I'm Hispanic. She goes, I don't care what you are. Well, wait a minute. You did, because that white part was a big part of your story, because that's how we nailed this to Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. But now you said you don't care. So which is it? She also changed her story from 15 items. Now today she just had 10.
Yeah. And Joshua, thanks for that $2 Canadian right there. He says, wasn't this discovered to be a hoax? Yeah, it's already, in fact, she's copping to it as being a hoax, because, she knows that, the jig is up. And I think that what's interesting in this is that look at how easy it is for a woman to have this as a tool, to use this when it is convenient. And now, because we have, we have a video camera in all of our cell phones, because we have this global, marketplace of ideas, whatever you want to call it, like social media, because we have that, it's really interesting to me to see like people who will automatically pile on and automatically believe all women. And then there's the side that goes, well, was this really something that really happened? And then what happens is, when you are skeptical of it, particularly if it's a woman, then you become the devil.
When I brought this up yesterday, I had women on Twitter and Facebook, women telling me that I'm a racist, a bigot, it's right to the ad hominem.
Believe because you had a modicum of critical thought.
because I dared to question. The other thing that I saw in spades yesterday was white knights. Man, they're coming out of the woodwork. They're standing up. They don't even know this chick, but they're standing up for her. There's no way a woman would ever lie about something like this.
Right. It's the same thing. It's like when we're talking about like we have such, and I think this is really a shame about like the whole Me Too movement and everything. When people say, well, when people come up with these sort of like frivolous, Me Too, well, it could have been rape, it might not have been rape. I was harassed, but I might not have been harassed. When we start, when we start from a position of believe all women, and then we take the definition of whatever harassment is, or whatever, whatever rape is, depending on whatever the going definition is, it lessens the impact of when that actually really happens. Mm-hmm. So when this woman comes out here and she says, oh, this man, he totally, made me cry. My baby was right there. And she goes through this really big emotional appeal that lessens. And here's the other thing is when people jump to a conclusion and they jump to believing, and just like you were saying, they're calling you a bigot, white knights are coming out of the woodwork to stand up for milady's honor. They do that because they're trained to do that. They're conditioned to do that. And so when people ask me, well, Rollo, what's the difference between the red pill and blue pill? Why do you keep calling it blue pill conditioning? Because that's what the village does. That's what the feminine imperative does. That's what our popular media and our popular culture and our popular consciousness does to people who we're raised by that village. That's why I said, it takes a village to raise a kid. Part of that is conditioning to do that, to jump to those conclusions.
Here's the other thing. And guys, listen to this, especially if you're married. Okay. Everybody has had an experience where your wife has gone to some store. She's been mistreated by, sales clerk, whatever. How does that work? Well, they usually come home and tell you about it, or they get on the phone with their girlfriends, or they call their mother. They tell them. You don't do a Facebook Live for the world. You don't hold a press conference the next day to talk about this incident that didn't really happen the way you told us it happened at Publix. And again, in this day and age, where we're constantly being we're under surveillance. We're being monitored every minute of the day, right? She goes through the express, which means there's a real person there, right? So we've got a witness there, and there's other people that were in the line. So, and who's this terrible, big, mean, ugly, white racist guy? And Publix does have the security cam footage. One of the TV stations is trying to get their hands on it. You have to be. It's like Jussie Smollett. He didn't realize you're constantly being watched. And when they saw the videos and everything, your story didn't pan out the way it did. And right. And here's what's really bad. What she's doing here is she's hurting the next person. Maybe there is someone who has an encounter like this. That person's not going to be believed because of her. She undermines, real incidents where something like that could happen.
Right. So when it actually happens, then we're already desensitized to that. But notice what's going on here, though, is we are so apt to believe this because our social discourse is founded in emotionalism. It's founded in emotional expression. And this comes from 2-3 different generations of people brought up to believe all women, brought up to prioritize emotion above reason. And that's really what I kind of wanted to dig into here today, is that like way back in the day, if a woman said something, the men folk would say, okay, well, it is the opinion of a woman. It is the witness or whatever of a woman. And we need to have this corroborated by other men there. Mm-hmm. So we weren't as ready to believe that because of that emotionalism. Now, because our popular consciousness is based in emotion rather than reason, and then it's this flat out, default belief all women.
Well, look at the Tulsa. You ever heard of the Tulsa? You ever heard of the Tulsa race riot, the Tulsa race massacre? Okay, back in 1921, and it all started with what a white woman alleged happened with a black, whatever it is, bellhop that was in the elevator at the time. And the story took off. He accidentally bumped into her. Next thing you know, people are one of the newspapers around here are alleging some sort of a sexual assault, and then they burned down half of Black Wall Street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they really wanted to believe. They want to believe that stuff. Do you remember when what was it? The UVA rape hoax happened with I forget her name, but it was Rolling Stone, and I forget the name of the author who.
I remember the story. Yeah, big
Anyway,
talker.
the chick who was the author of this, she is on on record as saying, "I look for stories that that I can embellish. I look for she goes hunting for those. Mattress Girl's another good one. I'm just looking at that too. We want to believe those things. We wanted to believe that the girl involved in the UVA rape hoax was, we're apt to believe that. We want to believe her story, whether it's whether it's true or not. And just to question those things. And remember, this UVA rape hoax, I believe, happened in 2014, and the woman who wrote the story for the Rolling Stone, and remember, there's a lot of money involved in this because the frat sued them, they sued the school, just because it was this automatic default belief that this girl had been raped at a frat party on broken glass, on a broken glass, like a coffee table or something like that, and it was like guys taking turns. It was just this horrific, gang rape of a girl, and there was no police record of it. There was no medical records of her. I mean, if she's going to be raped on glass, don't you think she would have had to gone to the hospital, or she would have been a bloody mess or something like that? All of these questions, and nobody wanted to ask those questions. And that's when we started to see this narrative of believe all women, or whenever a woman says that she's been raped, you always automatically have to believe her. Well, there's a lot that gets thrown into that. We're talking about a man's life. We're talking about a woman's life too. We're talking about like a lot of interest with respect to, like, if it's at a college or wherever that, quote unquote rape happened.
We had this story at OU last year. Remember that? You had one of the football players, black football player, woman's alleging sexual assault. Well, thank God the guy was smart enough to save all the text messages back and forth. They had consensual sex. What happened was, about a week into it, she thought they were going to become an item. She was bragging to her friends, I'm dating so-and-so. When she found out that it simply was a one-night stand, that's when all of a sudden she had this, I didn't really want to do that after all.
Yeah, it was regret. Now
it's rape. No, that's not the way it works.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that really kind of bugs me when it comes to rape, is that we are so loose with the definitions for that. It's, looking at a woman the wrong way can be construed as rape. Talking to a woman is, in some ways, is harassment. Whether the guy, maybe you've got a guy who's like socially awkward, and he says something that's sort of a misstep, or kind of a flub on his part, that can be construed as anything that I think even in Canada, like if a woman has sex with a guy and then later says, I didn't want to have sex with the guy, and it could have been 30 years later, that is qualifiable as rape, because there's no statutes of limitations for those kinds of things. Like even for the Kavanaugh hearing, we went back 30 some odd years to find some sort of incidents that could be construed. And the looser that we get with that, it's almost relative to how much we're supposed to believe women, is how much can we get away with that? How much more can we get away? And I'm not saying rape doesn't happen. It does happen. I get it. But it's like, that does women no favors by making things, like making the criteria for believability all about emotion rather than reason. And
here's why that is so important. And I brought up the quote from a friend of mine, Jaron Jackson. Okay, especially when it comes to millennials, they learn with their eyes and they think with their feelings. Women know exactly what's going on. Okay, that's why you're seeing more of this, especially with female politicians. They know that if they can get you to feel, you're going to disconnect the rational thinking. That is your automatic type of thinking if you're a guy. And now they've got you thinking like a chick, like a girl. You're thinking like a girl because you're feeling. You're not thinking, and you're no longer thinking rationally, but rather you're feeling. And that's where they own you.
Mm-hmm. And why are we at that right now? Because we have female teachers, because we have a feminine primary social order, because we have changed the definitions of, whether it's rape or it's harassment, or it doesn't even have to be that. We can change the definitions of what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, where we trade these things out but we're doing so because we believe, we believe in this blank slate equalism, right? We believe that a man and a woman are just basically the equal, things, and they should be able to reason and emote in similar ways. But if
we're not, we think differently, we process things differently, we love differently. We're not the same, and we're never going to be the same.
Right. And so because we still have those differences, but yet in society, we are taught that we shouldn't, that like a woman can be just as masculine as a man. I was just watching this on the drive in here today. I guess at the San Diego Comic-Con, they just announced that they're going to do a new Thor movie. And Natalie Portman is going to be Thor. They've changed the sex of Thor to be a woman. And of course everyone goes, yeah, great. This is awesome. But I mean, first of all, it's contrived. And second of all, it's like, it sends this message that one is just as good as the other, and that there's no differences between the two of them. And if there is, well, then it should be, based on lifting women up and supporting women and making women more powerful. So let's just remove Thor and put Lady Thor in there. And
I really wanted a female of color with a disability to play Thor. That would have been perfect for me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's how far are you going to take that? Well, the reason people cheer for that is because they're not thinking, they are feeling. It's all this emotionalism that goes along with that. And
have you heard they want to have James Bond as a woman now?
Yeah, that's yeah. I thought that was interesting too. Well, another thing, we have Thor as a woman, we have James Bond as a woman. It's like, at what point do we kind of just like throw this back up? And I'm waiting for the point, like there's going to be a threshold, there's going to be a tolerance point where we're just like, forget it. Like people didn't want to go see the all-female Ghostbusters.
Oh, what a disaster that was!
Ocean's 11, all-female cast of that. If you look at it's like a novelty act is to take these old, successful franchises and turn them into but we put a woman in there. And why do we think that's a good idea? Mm-hmm. Because we're taught to think with our emotions, or we're not really thinking, we want to feel that. And so when we say, oh yeah, it's going to be Lady Thor, we're like, yeah, that's like, we get that emotional high for a second. And then later on we go, is that really a good idea? Is anybody ever really going to go watch this? And
by the way, there was a female Thor in the comics too.
A comic. But I was just watching The Quartering, and Jeremy was saying this thing too. And apparently, the female Thor comic book was a complete flop. But we're going to follow that up with a movie. We're going to, I don't know. We're seeing more and more of this feminine primary social. We keep talking about the gender war. That's really where this is. But understand that the gender war, for it to be successful, for it to make an impact in our Western cultures today, it requires us to feel at the expense of our thinking. And like I said before, when I talk about different processes of interpreting information, when I talk about instinct, emotion, and then reason, that's how women prioritize their understanding of the world around them. For men, it's instinct, reason, and then emotion. Mm-hmm. Except in the last 50 or 60 years, we have feminized our men to believe that the only appropriate way to interpret anything is just like a woman. So you get all of these men today who believe in prioritizing it, instinct, emotion, and reason, if they ever even get to reason. And that we have to teach them to do that, because prior to all of this, in the old social contract, in the old way of doing things, men were skeptical. They were taught to be skeptical. They were taught to listen to the story of a woman and then say, is that really true? We don't do that anymore, because we're supposed to feel, and we're patted on the back for doing that. So when a woman cries, remember, we're dealing with first of all, our internal wiring, because we want to believe, we want to protect, we want to believe that if we do that, or if we show that kind of caring to, well, maybe we don't want to have sex or reproduce with the woman who's actually crying. But if there's a woman in earshot, or if we can anonymously say, I'm going to go defend my lady's honor, if word gets out that we're like that, that mindset believes that the more we are heroic, and the more we believe all women, and the more we identify with the feminine, the better off we will be in a sociosexual perspective.
Here's the thing you got to watch out though with the crying, because some women are really, really good at this. Okay. But it also, guys don't get this. It allows the woman to seize control of the frame. All of a sudden, now she's in control. She is controlling you with her emotion. She's upset. She's crying. All of a sudden, the ball's in her, her court, and she's controlling things. And it's a tool that I think guys just get duped into way too easily.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I remember that when you are listening to, like, it's one thing if you're just listening to a random woman cry, but if it's your mom or if it's a sister, if you're somebody that you're related to, you're far more likely to believe that that's an honest signal and an honest cue, unless you are raised to sort of be skeptical of the power of women's emotions. And so when you have a girlfriend and she's crying, yes, you've just entered into her frame, because guys are deductive problem solvers. We want, okay, she's crying. Clearly there's a problem here. I've got to figure out what it is I've got to do to make her not cry anymore. Right. Or the baby is crying, or her sister's crying. Like, if you live, like, how many daughters do you have?
I've got 3.
3 daughters and a wife. So there's 4 women in your house, or there has been 4 women in your household. How often, pending
any paternity suits that I'm not aware of?
Yeah. At any one time, at any time of the week, how often do they cry? How often do you hear, like, one of them has got something, like when my daughter calls my wife, I'm like, I'm half expect, like, if I'm listening in, I'm eavesdropping on it, I'm half expecting there to be some sort of crying going on.
What's the matter? What's the matter? What's
the matter? Well, because it seems to me, and if any women are watching this and they want to disagree, that's fine. It seems to me that women need to cry. They have a need for that. That's like sort of an emotional kind of stress valve for them.
It's a release. It's where guys get angry, women cry.
They even say that I need to have a good cry, or they want to go see a tearjerker kind of movie. Those kinds of things. That's appealing to, like, women like that. They want to go see that. God forbid, don't ever go see Marley and Me. Don't see that movie.
Let me give you a great story here. So I'm the oldest of 13. I was in high school, probably senior year. My wife is pregnant, or not my wife. My mother's pregnant with twins. Okay, and she's probably at about the 7-month mark. Right. So I come home from school. She's sitting on the couch. She's bawling her eyes out. And I'm there like, Mom, what's the matter? Because I'm thinking something bad happened. To lose the babies. Somebody died. What's going on? She looks at me. She goes, I'm just so happy. I'm there like, what? That doesn't even make sense. But I mean, that's what hormones can do to your emotions. But my mother wasn't somebody that cried a lot. Mm-hmm. So for me to see her there, I thought something was going on. Somebody died, or she lost the baby. I didn't know what was going on. And she's crying because she's happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a stress relief. It's because women prioritize their interpretive processes differently: instinct, emotion, and reason. And we raise our boys to follow that along with that, because they have nothing but female teachers. They're rewarded for, express your emotions. That's why we have such a problem today with, I laugh my ass off when I hear these guys saying, well, the reason we have school shooters is because these guys are beat up and they're bullied, and we have this really unrealistic sense of masculinity. No, we don't. We don't have anything like that. And we haven't had that for like 2 or 3 generations. It's just the easy answer to say most of the time, because from popular consciousness or popular psychology or popular education, popular media, that kind of stuff, we're not teaching boys to, like, smack them around, say, be a man, stand up. You and I were just talking about that one guy who's running for president, who said, he was on The View. What was that guy who was saying that the most dangerous words?
That's the governor. That's the governor from California.
California?
Yeah.
I thought
he's not running for president, though.
It's Carolina, because California is Jerry Brown. So
no, that Jerry Brown was before him. This is the new guy.
Oh, it's a new guy. Okay, well, so anyways, that guy, when you and I were talking about
the most dangerous words in our language: toxic masculinity,
or be a man. You don't
be a man. Yeah, be a man.
So, and these are like, that's old school BS is what that is. Nobody does that anymore. If anything, we're giving kids participation trophies now. We're telling boys that if they don't act like girls, if they don't learn like girls, if they don't emote like girls, there's something wrong with them.
Gavin Newsom is the guy's name.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And so we tell our boys to emote and to follow that process: instinct, emotion, and reason. And so what happens is, when a woman gets into that perspective where she, or that where she needs to make an emotional appeal, we're that much more sensitive to it, and we completely turn off our rational minds. We turn off that reasoning part that we're innately born with, but we've learned to sort of sublimate it because we have a feminine primary education system right now. And I mean that in the broadest sense, like
I've got hang-ups. I've got hang-ups with crying. I think I've talked certainly on my local program about it. But when I was 14, I had a situation where I just got so freaking emotionally upset I cried, and I hated myself for it. And I promised myself I would never cry again. Never, because crying's weakness. Crying is weakness. I cannot be weak. I shut myself down so hard that I didn't cry for like 30 years. It wasn't until my uncle's funeral, and I had to give the eulogy there. And I didn't fall apart in church, but when we went to the cemetery, they had a bagpipe player there. They played Amazing Grace, and it was like I got hit by a tsunami. I couldn't control it. It's just like because one of my brothers said, I've never seen you cry. And I hadn't cried in years, but I had shut myself down so hard, because to me, that is a sign of weakness. Now, there's appropriate times to cry, like when your dad dies, like when I got pretty emotional when my last daughter was born. Okay. But I didn't fall apart. I wasn't bawling, just ball of muck.
So here's what the feminine primary social order is going to tell you. They're going to say, you know what, Pat, you have a problem. And it was because you learned from your dad, or you learned from somebody, or you learned from this macho society that told you to man up and smacked you upside the head anytime you cried. And they told you, boys don't cry. And so therefore there's something actually wrong with you, because you don't cry on demand. You don't
cry on demand, like Clint Beck.
You don't push. Yeah, exactly. And they
give me the Vicks Vapor Rub. Let's get under the eyes.
They shame you for that emotional control. Because we're supposed to, by today's standard, we're supposed to cry on demand. We're supposed to be able to just, express our emotion like that. And that should be our default. Whereas prior to all of this, prior to the sexual revolution, prior to the new social contract, men didn't do that. And when we look at the differences, the gender differences between how men and women process emotion, this is a physical process. This is actually the way that our brains are wired. I can point you to study after study of how men process particularly negative emotions differently than women do. And it's
guys automatic default is anger.
Right.
With women, it's crying. I love that line from Jack Nicholson, Colonel Jessup in A Few Good Men. You weep for Santiago. You have that luxury. That's how he viewed crying.
And so what happens is they say that because you're not like expressing yourself, you're a potential danger. Because you exactly. Well, I think that
you're right.
Gavin Newsom would probably say exactly that. He would say, "Well, because you bottle it up, that's because you're a potential shooter. You're just a
here's the deal. That's why I work out. That's my release valve.
Well,
working out is my therapy.
Well, it used to be that men were taught to be in control of their emotions rather than to be like overly expressive, to default to emotionalism. And I think that when we need to get back to that, honestly. I think we need to get back into teaching our boys to be in control of their emotions, teach them how to deal with rejection, teach them how to deal with the, the emotional things that come up in their lives, and not necessarily just bottle it up, but like to channel it into different ways that aren't crying, that aren't acting like a spoiled little girl.
I think we all, and that includes women, need to be in better control of our emotions.
Yes, absolutely. Because we're that's like the highest reward, and that's why you get a woman like this lady here in Georgia. That's the default. She sees that as a means to an end. It's a means to, if you cry, you're going to. I think that most women at some point realize that their tears is a form of agency. We always talk about how women have and this is sort of related to that as well. But like we say, women's only real true agency with men is their sexuality. Well, if you take that away, what's left? Well, there's emotional appeals that can go to that as well. But that's the next best thing, I think. But like when you have that, like when an old woman is crying, it's a different dynamic than when like a younger woman is crying, or your mom is crying, or your sister is crying. But there's still that want for protection, And then there's that idea that we're supposed to believe all women. And then there's the idea that that, you know, of course, if it's part of your family, there's that altruism that goes with the family thing. So you want to protect off, you know, elements of your family as well. But there's that, you know, there's no question about, there's no reason, there's no skepticism for that woman doing what she did.
Even if they're upset, though. I mean, they don't even have to cry. You know, if she's upset, again, the guy's back in the position. That's where she takes control of the frame. And the guy, what's the matter? Did I do something?
Well,
what's
now,
wrong? Why are you upset?
Even just that questioning makes, and there is a barrier to men even questioning those things, to question the veracity, the legitimacy of her crying and her tears. How dare you do that? Why do we say that? Why do we say, how dare you? Because we want to believe all women, because we live in a feminine primary social order. But guys always give me grief about that. I say, well, you know, men run the world. No, they don't run the world, especially when it comes to like social issues like this, when it comes to gender dynamics, and it comes to gender politics. Now, if this woman had never been caught, if there had never been any video for it, if we lived 20 years earlier and she said the same thing, we would put this in the history books. We would say, because we would believe it, and we would go, oh my gosh, did you believe this way back in the day when such and such was at the market, all that kind of stuff? We would believe it. But now women have to sort of deal with the social media aspects, and they're like, the internet never forgets. There's video everywhere. So we can find out, you know, what actually happened. But the only thing we have to get past is the skepticism, because nobody wants to be skeptical. People are, like, particularly men, are fearful to be skeptical of a woman's story.
You're shamed if you are.
Yes.
Why? You don't believe her just because she's a woman?
Yeah, exactly. And so then you play that card. And again, this isn't, this is a very convenient time for this to happen. Obviously, it's going off at the same time that there's they're calling Trump a racist. When you see the was it the freshman class? Remember at the State of the Union address, all of the freshman women
wearing white
were all wearing white. You're looking at that, and you got to understand, when you see that block of women, of the freshman congresswomen, they are all making emotional appeals. If you look at AOC, what does she do? She cries. You know, she wants to put out these pictures, images of her at the gate, going, "Oh my God, they're keeping kids in cages," and she's crying. And you find out that it's actually BS,
staged.
Yeah, it's staged.
Yeah.
Or you see her crying like last week we were talking about how AOC was trying to make an emotional appeal to, what's the guy's name, Holmes or something like that, the guy who she was questioning about.
Former director of ICE,
Yeah, exactly. Again, an emotional appeal versus that rational appeal. And I think that what most guys need to do is they need to get to a point where they're unafraid of being skeptical about those things. It's easy if you don't believe that person because ideologically or politically they're on the opposite side of the aisle of you. But when it's in your own family, or when it's your girlfriend, or when it's somebody who's maybe she's, you know, shares the same political ideology as you, and she's using this emotional appeal, guys want to go along with that because ideologically, or maybe, you know, familially, they want, it's in their best interest to do those things, or they want to believe their girlfriend. Like you and I talk about this all the time. When guys or when women who are teachers and they abuse their 13-year-old students, right? Or we see, just, you know, there's not a week goes by that we don't see some story about a woman who is sexually assaulting.
This week's was a 35-year-old lesbian who was caught under the bed of her female student. By the way, that article referred to the 13 or 14-year-old girl, whatever it was, as her lover.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never find an article with a guy, 35-year-old guy, in the high school age girl being his lover.
That's the example I wanted to use here. Is like, why is there a separate standard of justice for women than there is for men? Why do men receive like 2 to 3 times the the sentencing for the same crime that women do. Why is that? Well, because there's that emotion. We have that protector dynamic. We have that emotional appeal. We want to believe all women. So even if the woman is guilty, we still want to say, well, we live in a social condition where she has to cry and she has to fake this so we can get the message across. Jussie Smollett, like, well, we live in an age where we want to identify with that. And even if it's just a complete 100% provable fabricated hoax, we still want to say, well, but we live in a time where guys would.
It could have happened.
It could have happened, right? And it's like, no, that's stupid. And we're not using our rational brains to really figure out that this guy is just doing this because he wants an appeal to attention, and he knows how to do it because he wants to become an outrage broker. And that's what she wanted to do. That's what AOC does. They're all outrage brokers.
By the way, we talked a little bit earlier about women being in control of their emotions. When we get into this thing about 10 types of women to avoid, not to marry, that is one of the biggest indicators right there. Is she emotional? Does she, is she constantly going? I want somebody who's stable, somebody who's level, right? Not these peaks and valleys all the time. But if they're drama queens, if they're always getting worked up about this thing, exercise about this thing or the next thing, man, there's so many red flags there. It's not even funny.
Right, and good luck with that. Okay, because men,
I wish you the best. Good luck.
I don't mean to be flippant about that, but it's like men and women are different, and you don't really realize just how different they are until you have to live with them, until you have daughters in your house, and you realize, I come from a family of like mostly men, of boys and men, right? And so it's really interesting to me because I only have a daughter. My brother has a son and a daughter, and a lot of the other people that are in our families, they have daughters, and I come from like a predominantly male background, and so for me to have raised a daughter and to have lived with my wife for as long as we just celebrated 23 years yesterday. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
And so
where'd you get her? Where'd you get her?
Oh, we just went to a really good restaurant. I took her to, I'm not going to say where I went. Oh, what the hell. I went to the Chart House yesterday. It was really good. That's great. But that's all we did. We just go, we tell each other we love her, we love each other, and that's it. And we went to the lake and sort of wandered around the lake for a little while. It was good. For us, it's just really sort of talking about like, where we've been and where we are and where we're going. That's usually our anniversaries are usually an occasion for us to sort of like say, where do we want to go next, kind of thing. So anyways, but I'm living and learning from women and learning from the process of seeing a young woman grow from being a toddler all the way up to being 21 years old and understanding the process. And I don't think you really appreciate that, the differences between a man and a woman, or the natural, innate differences between men and women, until you have those kinds of experiences and you see how they, like I was just saying a minute ago, it's like if you live in a house full of girls, at any one moment, there's probably one of them is crying. And there's got to be, and there's some reason for it, or you said something the wrong way, or you don't understand. Like a lot of guys get into trouble with women because our conversation style is so blunt and they take it the wrong way. And you might have been just like, hey, what's the big deal? And she's like, oh, you said this. And you're like, what the hell just happened? And you just don't understand
I know guys that they would rather stay at work or go to the gym or do something else. They don't want to go home because they don't know what kind of a mood
home too.
The wife's going to be into, or if they've got teenage daughters, that are just because they don't. Every day is different. Every day is different.
Yeah, and it can be, and the operative in all of this. Like when I wrote if you look in the description here, I've got a couple of posts in there. One of them is called The Crying Game, and I wrote that post quite a while ago, actually, for exactly this thing. It's like a lot of guys were saying, whenever my girlfriend cries, I do stupid things. I spend money I shouldn't. I do things that I shouldn't, and they don't understand why it's such a trigger for them. It's like a conditional trigger. And yes, women use emotions to facilitate the things that they want to. Now, here's the other thing. When I say women can and do manipulate men with their emotions, with crying, with their emotional outbursts, with screaming, whatever, they do that. When I say that, women will go, how dare you? They'll freak out on that kind of stuff. But they know that it's true, and they know that they can use that to their advantage. But the thing is like, they will say, well, what about the intent? What's the motive behind that? No woman actually does that because she wants to manipulate you. The effect is that she manipulated you, but in the moment, she may genuinely feel what it is she's feeling. Even this lady here who's been lying at
some of these people actually believe the lie that they're telling.
It's pathological. It's
pathological. But she, in that case, she knew exactly what she was doing. She was crying to manipulate not just guys, but everybody watching.
Everyone. Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say that's an even broader use of the female emotional.
They've weaponized it.
Yeah, it will weaponize it for sure. But it's ideologically expedient. We're using that right now. But for instance, if you've got a woman who believes earnestly that, she was wronged in some way and she's crying, she might subconsciously be using that as a manipulative tactic.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to ask her, are you genuine in your feelings? Do you really feel these things? She'd probably pass a lie detector test. She'd probably, yes, I do. I feel this way. I really, really do. And she probably really does. But
I felt offended.
The latent purpose of it is to manipulate.
I think that's really the thing that guys need to be aware of, especially younger guys that are just really getting into the whole, dating scene and or thinking about getting married. I cannot tell you how important it is to vet a woman emotionally, especially if you're planning on having kids, because that's a trait she's going to pass down. Mm-hmm. She's going to be, if she's balanced, okay, chances are you're going to have kids that are balanced. If she's, all over the place, guess what your kids are going to be like, especially the girls.
Yeah, outrageous and crazy. Well, and here's the other thing is I understand what you're saying, and I 100% agree with you, but within the context of understanding that men and women are different and they process emotions differently.
Right. Right.
So you can't, I don't think it's fair to expect a woman to be so stable that she's almost a man. And that's not going to happen anyways. But like, if you're saying, well, I want a woman who's emotionally stable and she can't cry and she can't have these outbursts and she can't, she's got to sort of turn off her emotions and be masterfully in control of her emotions. That's simply not going to happen because we're not wired that way. And also the way that we're acculturated teaches women to embrace that and to go with it. And
if you've got a woman that can't cry or doesn't cry, that's a dangerous woman. That's like Sharon Stone, Fatal Attraction.
Yeah, then you've got something that
she was at Basic Instincts.
And you have that calculation that goes on behind that. I think that one of the things that guys really don't understand is like they think that a woman, like I talk to guys who will say, I don't understand why women can't just communicate like men. Why can't they just say what they mean and mean what they say? And none of this, I don't want a game player. I don't want a girl who's going to play games with me and manipulate me. I just want a down to earth gal who, goes out there and milks the cows on the farm and we just get back to doing what we're supposed to be doing. Right. That's not going to happen. You're not going to find that woman ever anywhere unless she's got like a sex change or something like that, because you're not going to find a woman who thinks like a man.
You were rich. You were rich. Put up a clip yesterday of two women. I think the one lady was originally from Colombia. She had studied to be a doctor, but apparently doctors get paid crap down there, right? Mm-hmm. And so what she did is she married a Canadian, and she got into Canada, and then she goes, and then I divorced him, and both her and the other girl just killing themselves laughing. This is, I mean, that is a dangerous, cold, calculating, deceptive female. That is the dangerous part, the ugly part of it. They don't even care. They don't even care. It's just like, I used you and I'm bragging about using you.
Yeah, and I'm still going to keep doing it too. And I'm going to do it in the future so long as I can get away with it. And I think when you see, here's the thing is, from the time of the sexual revolution up through where we are right now, we've been feminizing generation after generation of guys. But here is the kicker. We live in a communication age where we have the capacity or the facility, I guess, to see this stuff happen in real time. So this, like I said, this gal who was crying, in Georgia, we might, in another time, we might not have found her out. I think what we're seeing right now is sort of a test for men to sort of understand that women's nature is actually one way, but we have to push past our conditioning. We have to say, you know what, it's okay to be skeptical of a woman's story. It's okay to not believe all women. It's okay to do that because we have to. Because if we don't, people die. People's lives are ruined. People like the guy you were talking about on the football team, or the college guy on the football team who gets accused of rape or something like that. His life is ruined even after he's exonerated, because he's the internet never forgets. So there's the margin for error is getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and the risk associated with that is growing greater and greater, because we no longer care about whether or not a guy was proven innocent in a court of law. In the court of social media, he's guilty. And there's always going to be that asterisk next to him. So he's not going to get the football deal. He's not going to, basically his life's ruined. You better go learn the code, right? So we've got that as sort of the stakes in this game right now. And I think that if anybody takes anything away from this conversation today, and you're a newbie to this, or you think maybe it's a good policy to believe all women, be more skeptical. Start thinking in terms of, well, did that really happen? We always talk about this, like when, especially on the left, we say we want to vet for like fake news.
Right.
Well, it's okay to do that as long as it fits your ideological bent. But if we're talking about, we want to vet for fake news with respect to a woman claiming to have been abused or harassed or whatever, and this, I mean, she's not the lady in Georgia here. She's not even saying she was raped. She's not saying she was harassed. She was just saying that she was just like berated by some guy because she's looking for, well, first of all, she's looking for attention, but she's also looking to reinforce the narrative. And that narrative is like, Trump is an evil person. So, oh, look, here's another example of that. Oh, look, here's another. And we reinforce that with little bitty reinforcers, and we don't ask those questions. And so that becomes our base, our knowledge base, our base of truth. And even those those bases are completely false, or nobody asked any questions about them, if you're not going to ask those questions, if you're not going to have skeptical inquiry into these things, and we live in a condition that represses that says you shouldn't be skeptical, then where do we go from there? The stakes get even higher and higher. So when we're looking at things going into the 2020 election cycle, when we start to see this gender war, when we start to see gender politics define our everyday politics, remember that the operative here is that they don't want you to ask those questions. They want you to believe. They want you to want to believe. So it's like the UVA rape hoax. So many women wanted to believe that was true, no matter, it was crazy, outrageous, story behind this. But did that really happen? It had to be that crazy, over the top, outrageous for anybody to go, wait a minute, and then look into it, and then look what happened as a result of that. Millions of dollars from UVA, millions of dollars for the Rolling Stone, probably I don't even know if the woman is still, I forget what is it? Sabrina Erdley. That's what her name. God, I can't believe I remembered that. Sabrina Erdley was the writer who wrote that story for Rolling Stone. She was going out looking for, stories like that so that she could aggrandize them. And so is she still working? I don't know. Nobody knows. Is she still doing anything? She should be ruined. She should be absolutely ruined, and nobody would have anything to do with her. I guarantee you she's still writing.
By the way, have you seen the trailer for the new Top Gun 30th anniversary?
I have not seen the trailer. I've seen.
There's a quote. There's just a quote. I want to bring it to your attention because this is sort of where we're coming from. Guys that think like we do. Guys that are truly red-pilled. Okay. There's a quote in there. Ed Harris's character warns Maverick. He says, "Your kind is headed for extinction." Okay. Mm-hmm. To which Maverick replies, "Maybe so, sir, but not today." That's what we're doing here is a service so that this doesn't become extinct.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like, for instance, when I talk about guys in the MGTOW community, okay, they got it right. They got the analysis right. They understand what's going on. They understand the mechanics. They understand the relations between men and women are becoming stressed, just like what we've been talking about right here. It's so easy to manipulate men into positions where it could damage their lives, and they don't even realize that. And they think they're doing the right thing, but they don't understand the manipulation. They don't understand the ease and the facility with which women will will lie like this, or will, and I'm saying all women will, I'm just saying any woman can. They got that right. It's like, what do you do with that information though? And where do you go with it? And where do you take it from there? And so what happens when there are no more mavericks, right? What happens when there are no more guys who are saying, who don't say, or who don't believe all women? What happens then? You know, where does a social order go after that? That's why I'm saying it needs to be something that we're teaching the next generation. Right. We need to be able to, you know, do this right here, have platforms to make men more skeptical. And I think a lot of guys won't give themselves permission to do that because they've been conditioned for so long not to.
All right. Do you want to get into the 10 types of women?
Yeah, let me we got some supers here. Let me just whip through these really quick because most of these are like $1 and $2.
That's what she said.
Cam himself, thanks for those. Actually, he gave me $4. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Tips on handling a girl more organized than you are. Get more organized. I don't really know where you're going with that, but why is she more organized than you? Do you mean like she's calculating? I would need to know a little bit more information about that. Ken VR.
You want a woman with those qualities.
Somebody I would like to have a woman who I like. You know, one of the things I like about my wife is she's a list maker, and she's always been like, okay, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do that. And when it comes to like day-to-day things, and where we need to like make decisions to you know, where we're going to move, where we're going to live, where we're going to go work, blah, 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 that kind of stuff, or what we're going to do in a particular time, like bills that need to get paid here. We check that off. That's great. But when we get on vacation and it's like, okay, we got to go snorkeling and we got to do this and we got to, you know, we got to hit the beach and we got to, and so that's when it gets kind of annoying. But
my favorite list from a girlfriend was it only had 2 things on it. Number 1, St. Patrick. Number 2, everything else. I'll work with you.
Ken VR, $2. Why do some females never initiate contact? Do you mean in the terms of like, are they interested in you or are they not interested in you? If women,
I'm thinking what he's probably saying is if you don't call them, they're not going to call you. If you don't
call you back,
some of that is actually, I don't know, at least to me, attractive because that's more old school where the guy takes the lead. She's expecting you to be competent.
Yeah, it's levels of interest, and she's probably exactly. It's a competency test to see you know how dedicated you are. But I think a lot of guys sort of take that one step beyond, and then they overdo it. It's one thing to like give her a call or text her and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you initiating these contact?" It's another thing to constantly be doing that and to have the onus of the relationship be all about you. You're basically living in her frame and you're qualifying to her in your frame all the time. The other, sometimes this is a tactic. Sometimes it's a tactic to as a test to see if you know if you're really involved, if you're really interested. But the other thing is maybe you're not the first priority. So. Prussia Kid, why do politicians shed crocodile tears? You want to take that one, Pat?
Because they know that it works. It makes you disconnect from rational thinking. You begin to think emotionally. You're now putty in their hands. They can do whatever they want with you.
Yes,
that's why they do it, and that's why we're seeing more of it.
It's a seduction tactic. If you ever read the Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, that's actually in the book. It's like even male politicians do this. Obama is famous for that the tears he shed after a school shooting or something. I'm not saying he wasn't actually, moved by emotion. Great, but like understand that the meaning of that is different than like when Hillary Clinton was shedding tears. We look at those two things in different ways. So it's a
by the way, when it comes to guys, Bill Clinton was very, very good at that. He wouldn't fall apart like Glenn Beck or something, but he could put on where he just pause. You can tell he was going to get emotional. That guy knows how to play a crowd.
Yes. Prussia Kid, thank you for the $4.99. He said, I'm just going to read this and move on. He said, erected man is viewed to be as dangerous as a sword in the Greek world. Okay. Thank you. Glenn Meyer, thanks for the buck. Josh, we already read yours, but I'll do another one here. You said, I'm a quadriplegic. Cast me as James Bond. Okay. And then Glenn Meyer, thanks for that $1. And YOLO, once again, I believe these are Norwegian $55 in Norway. Hi, what is the best way to deal with a woman who is nagging, especially if she's doing it every day when I come home from work? Why only after my work? We have at least 2 videos on that about nagging.
2-word answer. Leave her.
Yeah, exactly. What's it worth to you? Do you really want to deal with that? And people say, well, you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Here's why she does that. She does that because it's a competency test. She wants to see whether or not you're attentive to her needs, and you're like, whose frame are you really in? And when women nag you, especially if you're in a long-term relationship, it's usually to say, remember, hypergamy is based on doubt. And that doubt says, is he the best I can do? How does she test to find out if you're the best she can do? She nags you. She said, are you competent? Can you fix the dishwasher? Can you change the oil in the car? Can you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? That nagging is a competency test. We also have Freelance Ronan. Thanks. He says, excellent discussion. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Lazarus Rose, $9.99. This is the last one. Have you guys seen the story about the current Mr. Olympia being accused of rape? I have not.
Yes.
If not, I'd like to hear y'all's feedback on it. Sounds fishy to me.
So he was accused of raping a female bodybuilder in his hotel room back last October. She's married, by the way. And this just conveniently comes out, I guess, weeks before the actual contest. The organizers have banned him not only from this year's competition, but from any future competitions. The guy hasn't even been tried in court. And but we're back. It's like Kavanaugh. You are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. There may be some politics involved in this too, but that's basically I guess the Cliff Notes version.
Sounds to me like a good example of just what we were talking about. The court of social media outweighs the court of law. Even in the court of law, we have different standards of justice for men and women, but think of what that difference is in the court of social media. So now, again, we haven't lived in a time or an age where we have this global village. Really, everybody's talking about something. So if we believe all women, and who knows, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but for us to not be able to ask those questions, and for us to make decisions, like long-term decisions, based on the presumption of guilt. That's all we always presume guilt when a woman is saying something, is accusing a man of something. We always presume that guilt. You want to go? Okay, that's it for the supers for right now. Do you want to move on to our bonus?
Yeah, let's get into some of the things to look out for, red flags, whatever you want to call it. 10 types of women.
Okay, now explain to everybody why, or like what was the video that sort of brought this about?
Well, there was a video, and there was also, I sent you one from the Huffington Post. There was an article in the Huffington Post. Now, keep in mind, this is written by a woman, Samantha Daniels, supposedly for men. It says 10 types of women that men do not want to marry. It was based on a survey of, I don't know how many guys, and just some of the things they came up with. A lot of it's pretty much common sense. They say Miss Bossy Pants, okay? Somebody that's already, telling you what to do, especially when you're in the dating phase.
Right.
I mean, that is a bad indicator of things to come. It's like bail now, because during the courting phase, whatever you want to call it, she's already calling all the shots. What do you think is going to happen once you're married? You may as well stand over your nuts right now.
Well, that's what I always say. When I've talked about frame, I've always said this, is that the frame that you enter into, like when you're in a long-term relationship, that is going to color your relationship going forward, even if you lose it. So if you're a guy and you say, I've got really solid frame, I'm going to marry this girl, it's almost like if you move into marriage and your frame is the frame that she wants to be involved in, and you lose that makes you look almost even worse, because you're proving yourself to be incompetent on top of that.
Well, we have to go to my mother's on Friday, or something like that. I mean, when they start treating, but here's the thing. There's some guys out there, we've talked about this before. There's guys out there that want a mommy, okay? But this is a big indicator. If she's treating you like you're her child, and she's dictating to you what you're going to do, what you can't do, what friends you can have, what friends you can't have. If she's all of a sudden, doing all of those things during the dating phase, man, you're nuts if you're signing up for that deal.
Yeah, well, and that's it. What was the other one? There was another one about like dating Miss Insecure. I think that's one of the things off that video. And
Right.
what I found interesting about it, and the video link is in the description if anybody wants to see what we're talking about here. And it's really kind of like poppy, fluffy psychology kind of stuff. Very Oprah, but I every once in a while I like to address this kind of stuff just so people understand that this is so common that we take it as common sense. Like you were just saying before, it's like these seem like, pretty easy ideas to figure. Yeah, they are. They're meant to be. They're easily digestible, like info bites is what they are. But when we look at these lists of things to vet for a woman, a lot of these, they make sense. But when you get into that relationship and there are other aspects of the relationship that are so good that you want to look past. Like she had one thing. She said, you shouldn't just be with a girl who's just a pretty girl. Like that's all she brings to the table. All she is just the pretty girl. And so you're like
short shelf life.
You're stunned, yeah, short shelf life, but you're stunned by her beauty, right? You will make bad decisions in other areas, or you will look past other things because she's the hottest girl you ever got with. And particularly for beta blue pill guys, yeah, that's definitely dangerous. Do you want to marry that girl? I don't know what else is she. Maybe she's the nicest lady, nicest girl in the world, and she just happens to be hot. Well, okay, how does that affect other aspects of her life? Same thing with Miss Insecure. Like she was saying, you don't want to go out with just a girl who's always insecure all the time, and you have to keep following up with her all the time. Like, you're so great. You're giving her always giving these positive strokes, this positive reinforcement.
She's constantly doubting herself. You have to do that.
Yes.
I want a woman. I think a woman who is confident, not cocky, but confident.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's attractive. I've never met a woman though that is 100% confident. They may be like in their chosen field, like if they're an attorney or a doctor, but in their personal lives, I almost think that having self-doubt is part of being a woman.
Yeah, it would have to. I mean, for being just a human being, but it's like how you deal with that and how you allow that to affect the decisions in your life.
But we don't wake up in the morning and go, am I pretty? Do you think I'm fat? Yeah. Do I look older now? Guys, that's more of a feminine trait than it is. I'm not saying guys don't do that, but it tends to be more feminine than it is male or masculine.
I read this thing, and I think it was in Fortune magazine, or maybe it was in Forbes or something. And they do every year, I guess, this magazine polls like the top executives in the world, guys who are like the leaders of like maybe Fortune 500 guys. Mm-hmm. And they ask them, they say, now that you are in a great position, like you're making a lot of money, your dreams are where you want them to be, you're an entrepreneur, you're a leader of industry, you're a CEO, whatever, what's next for you? What can you do to improve your life? Because these are guys who've got a lot of money in the bank. They're high status men. Where can they go from here? Where's up from here for you? And damn near every one of them said, I wish I had 6-pack abs. I wish I looked better. I wish I need to get a hair transplant. I need to, I need to lose 60 pounds. That kind of stuff. It was all this we would otherwise say superficial, but that's what's like, these guys got that side of their lives like completely handled. Where do they go from there? It's not like, oh, I want to start another business, or, oh, I want to take my game to the next level. They are thinking, I want to look better, because that's the side, that's what they see as far as the sexual marketplace. That's what they see women leaning towards. It doesn't matter how much money they have so much as it's like, what do they look like? And how can they attract women? Or that's a deficit in their lives. And you're talking about guys who are very on top of their game.
I look at Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos looks like an absolute dork, but that dorkiness is overshadowed by his billions. Mm-hmm. So he's gonna be attractive. Maybe not like an alpha male would be attractive, but he's gonna be attractive to women like what's her name, Sanchez. Mm-hmm. That's with him right now. I mean, if he was just a I don't know, a greeter at Walmart, he wouldn't be getting offers.
Mm-hmm. That's a good example, because I remember before all this happened, and there were some guys in the red pill community, and they were showing this one meme of Jeff Bezos, like back in the day when he was skinny and kind of off, a little bit off, right? And then they showed that other picture of him. I'm sure you know which one, and he's yoked. and it looks like he's been working out, and he's got sunglasses on, and he looks like a masculine guy. And so people saw that and they go, oh man, it's nice to see he finally took the red pill, or it's nice to see that he's finally, becoming a bit more masculine. And even Mackenzie Bezos responded to that, because like she used to be kind of like this pixie cut, kind of like,
Right.
just as dorky as he was. And so then she starts wearing slinky dresses. She starts looking a little bit better. She grows her hair out, and you're thinking, wow, something has changed in all of this. And then all of this other stuff happens, and now he's with Dirty Sanchez, and now he's like, kissing on her.
Yeah, but that stuff didn't just happen. When he started doing that, I mean, I'm looking at him back then going, that's unusual, because a guy that's 49, 50 years old, all of a sudden gets himself in shape. It's just like a woman. If a woman's been married 15, 20 years, and all of a sudden she loses 50 pounds, starts caring about herself, looking a lot better, there's a reason, because she's leaving you. She's stepping out. She's not doing it for you. She's already, she's over you. She's moving on to the next phase. It's the same with guys. If guys start, we had a guy at work that was an absolute slob a number of years ago. All of a sudden, he started wearing, pretty snappy clothes, had a fresh shirt on every day, could smell the cologne. And it's like, well, what's going on here? Oh, there's a new lady at work. And he's spending a lot of time with her in the office, and that's what was going on. Those are dead giveaways, that something's up.
Yeah, and then that's guys being guys. That's particularly blue pill guys.
Women do that too. I mean, women, again, they are going to get everything together before they actually say, by the way, I'm leaving.
Yeah,
everything mapped out, planned out.
They're gonna for women, it's a little bit different, because women, by the time she gets to the breakup, she's already broke up with you like 6 months in her head. She's just trying to find, leaving you is just a formality. Right. She just wants to find some way to get away from you. But the point I was making is, as far as Jeff Bezos is concerned, is like his money and his his status facilitates his blue pill nature. He can get away with all this stuff, and he'll never learn. He'll never read my book. He'll never learn to sort of like alpha up, because why? What's the point of it? Like, he could live like Dan Bilzerian if he wanted to, but it doesn't even occur to him.
Right. Did you see that kiss that he gave to Sanchez at Wimbledon? That picture I gave?
I think I saw it.
He's leaning out with that. He's got it looks like a turtle, right? And it's so the beta thirst. I mean, he's just reaching. She's giving him a little bit of the cheek.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
And she understands that too. This is her talking about women manipulating guys. He's an easy mark. He's a big fish, and he's an easy mark. She sees that in him. She sees the beta in him, and whether or not a woman can, live with that is another thing. But if all a woman is about is being a gold digger, or all she is about is just resources, and she can sublimate that nature where she's like, yeah, I actually have to kiss Jeff Bezos. If she can do that, she can profit. That's an easy mark. But I don't think a lot of guys realize that women read them a whole lot better than they think they do. And so when you see an imbalance, when you see a guy who's overweight and he's with a hot chick, there's something that's offsetting that. There's some sort of deficit there. It's like, why would that woman want to be with that guy? There's some extenuating factor in that. Or you see, whatever, if you see some sort of imbalance that you would naturally think is a little bit weird, there's always something in between that.
Back to this list here of women to avoid. This is one of my pet peeves right here too. It says women that want to change you. They say this woman is lurking everywhere. And she's the one type of women many men are most leery of. If you got somebody, like we touched on this a little bit earlier, somebody who wants to change, who your friends are, who you hang around with, where you go, what kind of clothes you wear, all these other things. She's doing all this for you. She's trying to change you. The only person that can change you is yourself. And you're the only person you can change. You can't change other people. Guys get into this too. They pick up women that they know, well, she's probably not really the marrying type. She's not going to make a good mother. But once we're married, I'll be able to change her. They're delusional. It never happens.
Yeah. Well, women are the same way too. It's like the reason why this is so common, and why this is like, it would be great if you could figure this out prior to you getting married to that person. Right. But what usually happens is she's one way while you're single and you're fooling around, and then suddenly you decide you're going to get married. And then 3 months after you're married, that's when she tries to change. Well, you're a husband now, or you're going to be a father now, so you need to make some changes, mister. You need to be fit into this idealistic role that she has in her brain, like what she thinks that her husband ought to be like.
Right.
You want to know, this is a key, a red pill key to success in relationships, if that's what you choose to do. If you choose to get married, if you choose to be in a long-term relationship, the key to success is maintaining your identity and well, of course, maintaining frame. Obviously, I'm going to say that. But how do you maintain frame? You maintain who you are. You resist that. You resist becoming what that ideal is for that woman. Because first of all, if you do that, then you are incompetent. You are saying, I'm not competent enough, and I need a woman to tell me how to be. And like I say, when women are, when I tell guys, I say, women want you to just get it. And if she's telling you how to get it, that looks like incompetence to a woman. So she wants you to just, turn on a dime and be her ideal. Well, men need to resist that. It's not to say that you shouldn't be, compliments to one another. You should, but you need to maintain your own identities. And if she's not, if you become who you think she wants you to be, that is a recipe for disaster.
One of the things that, and we talked about this off air before too, that you really need to vet a potential spouse for is here's a clue to look for something. If she is telling you intimate details of something her best friend shared with her, well, guess what? You're going to be her new best friend. The question is, who's she going to share that information with? Yeah. An ideal, I shouldn't even say an ideal mate. A good mate is going to be somebody who understands that there are certain things that are between you and her, nobody else, that they don't share with anyone else. Intimate details, her best friends shouldn't know what your favorite position is. You know what I'm saying? There's stuff in your relationship that is nobody else's business but the two of you.
That's good. That's a good one. I talked about this, or actually, I talked about this with Hotep Jesus, and Hotep Jesus also talked about this on Joe Rogan's. Like, he thinks when Joe asked him about like what women need to do, how women need to change, that was like number one on his list, which is don't share our intimate details with your friends, because am I in a relationship with you, or am I in a relationship with your best friend? Is that what, and is your conversations with her or your girlfriends, is that going to alter our, person, like you and me? And really, when I listen to that, I understand what he's saying. I 100% agree with him. But what I see going on there is a woman is more invested in her friendship with her friend than she is with the guy that she's married, the guy that she's supposed to have babies with, the guy that she's supposed to live the rest of her life with. And so she has a deeper, more significant relationship with her girlfriends than she does with you. And that goes back to genuine desire. Does she have a 100% genuine desire? If she's doing that, not likely, because she values that friendship above and beyond anything.
That relationship is sacrosanct. It's French for sacred, right? And I remember my mom always worked when I was a kid, despite the fact that she had 13 kids, but we had to, because to get food and to pay for everything else. But she was a nurse, right? And the one thing that sticks in my head that she shared with us, even when we were younger, is you never talk about your spouse with your coworkers. And I would extend that to friends too, especially when it comes to intimate details. Because what happened in the nursing profession, women would come in, they would start bitching about their husband. Well, Dan did this or Dan did that. The other women, of course, are a support group there. And 9 times out of 10, what winds up happening is they wind up splitting, right? And all of that, it didn't just happen, but it starts and it's being fed. It's like a cancer, because they're going and sharing this with other people. It's metastasizing. My mother always kept her relationship with my father private. Nobody else knew any details. That includes the kids. Kids, but it's certainly not stuff you share, because you go to work and then all of a sudden you've got a sympathetic ear, somebody who likes you or supposedly likes you, and you're telling them just your side of the story. And of course, they're going to side with you to begin with, right?
And God forbid that your wife's best friend is her mom. And you keep it.
Does she call her mother 5 times a day? That was another one that was on that list.
Yeah. Definitely. I think, gosh, whenever I have an anniversary and people hit me up, everybody wants to say, "Oh, Roll Tomasi, he hates women," and I've been with the same woman for 24 and a half years. But whenever my anniversary comes up, I think, okay, what is it that I'm doing that's right? What is it that's facilitated this? You know, what is it that's made my situation with me and my wife click? Right. And that's definitely number one. All of the things that we've just been talking about here, it's not like I vetted my wife for these things, but it, because we are who we are and it works the way that it does. Yeah, definitely. She's not insecure. She has a confidence to her. She's not like, you know, she's not a career woman. I think people need to understand that, like, when we talk about careerist woman, that's one thing. It's another thing for a woman to have a job. My wife has a job. She's not a careerist. She doesn't have a career. She works in the medical industry, but she has a job. And I have a career, and so she can change her job while my career sort of develops a little bit. And that's,
by the way, that works two ways with the calls. Now, if a woman's calling her mom 5 times a day, that's but if mom's calling her, that's a different thing.
Right.
You know, mom. It's like mommy's not going to let go, or mommy's still using her to do whatever. You know,
mommy and her are collaborating on decisions for your life. That doesn't.
No, I'm not even talking about that. I mean, just there's some mothers that, you know, they still almost like have a chore list for their daughters to do. And it would actually be in the daughter's best interest to move far away from mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's almost like too much.
Yeah. And then you'll find that women or your wife will mature in such a way. I always tell guys to be very careful of the woman who's very deeply invested in her family, who wants to like live, you know, buy the house 3 blocks away so that they're right around the corner.
We can never move away. We always have to be here.
Yeah, that's bad. We got one more here from Ibo. He says, I'm the most experienced IT guy in my firm. The HR woman tries to push female applicants on me. Every time I deny, she lectures me about sexism. She judges male applicants badly, makes me angry. Shall I leave? Talk to the CEO or her?
Was the CEO a woman?
Yeah, exactly. Is
maybe my first question.
I think you're going to see more and more of this as we get, you know, deeper into the gender war here.
You shouldn't be hiring somebody based on their sex or their color, and especially in a business like that, it should be based on competency.
Right?
How good are you?
I mean, and we see this all the time. That's why HR departments are primarily female, is because they're there to institute. They're the overseers in the locker room, is what they are. So, I don't know. Can you quit? Go ahead, quit. I think, or start your own business, or get into the position where you are the one that's making those decisions. Is your turning down a woman in favor of a man, is that going to jeopardize your job? Are you going to go through some sort of, I would be interested to see if there are guys who have done that, like where they've said, you know what, I'm sticking to my guns. I want you to hire this guy because he's the best experience. And they say, no, we want you to hire a woman. And then the guy gets let go because it's interpreted as some sort of like, tacit sexism on his part. I don't know.
There was some sort of an experiment I saw one time. I can't remember if it was in 2020 or what, but they had job applicants, right? And it was gender neutral. You didn't know if it was a man or a woman. You didn't know if they were Black, Asian, Hispanic, Caucasian, whatever. You didn't know that part. And the hiring process would have been very different just based on the skill set. Mm-hmm. But because of quotas, you know, in a particular business, they wound up hiring people that really weren't necessarily the best choice.
Yeah, and that's all. And this guy said he works in IT, and it's interesting that it is subjective to certain industries and certain positions, like IT being one of them, because they're trying to push women into IT, and you know, I'm sure there are women who are good coders as well, but I mean, realistically, because of the demands of that job, a man is going to be a better fit for that, simply because he has a different, like, men and women are different. We have different, you know, cognitive abilities, and that for being in IT, those cognitive abilities are manifest in men mostly. But to go and try to adjust things so that you have a woman there as opposed to a man, what's that going to do? Do we need a woman's input in IT? Is that going to change the technical aspect of that job? Probably not. We're not talking about like writing for the next Lady Thor or something like that. We're not talking about like making society more equal with respect to women. We're talking about a technical job. So whether she's a woman or she's a man is going to make very little difference as to whether or not she knows what she's talking about, because 1 + 1 is 2, regardless of whether it's a man or a woman who comes to that conclusion.
One of the other ones I want to throw in here is keeping up with the Joneses. And this you need to sort of have an understanding of where this woman that you're dating or thinking about marrying is on social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, what have you. I've really noticed it probably in the last 15 years with the advent of, some of the shows on cable like HGTV, a channel just dedicated to homes. Women have been convinced, some men have too, that you have to have granite counters, because anything less, food tastes better on granite counters, right? You have to have this appliance, that appliance. You have to have, this kind of a setup in the house. And in programs where they're constantly pushing materialism, whether it's I have to have this car because my best friend has one, or we have to live in this neighborhood because this is the chic place to live right now. That is a woman that is going to cost you a lot.
Yeah, one of those items on the video you showed me is the spender. The woman who is all about the spending of the money rather than, I guess saving the money would be the opposite, right? But it's one thing for women to go and spend things on, within their means, but it's another thing for a woman to be a habitual spender. And I think that sort of ties in with what you're talking about there with rampant materialism. You're going to get that anyways. It's just like by order of degree, particularly in Western societies. You're always going to have the material is going to be a sign or a signifier of the kind of guy that she married. Is this guy competent enough to afford granite countertops? Is the guy that it always comes back to what was her choice to involve herself in? Are you with a woman who is into the marriage and into the family and into you? Is it because of you, or is it because you can give her granite countertops? Is it because she can drive a Mercedes because of you? Is that it? And I've always said this anyways, is women don't marry men, or they're not they don't fall in love with who you are. They fall in love with what you are. And what you are needs to be competent.
I was at a local grocery store here early one Sunday morning, maybe a year or two ago, and there was a guy, probably about 50-ish, just an average guy, works at American Airlines, but he had married a young lady from Thailand. And I happened to be around them when they were shopping, and this coming to the United States was a complete, shock to her. All the stuff that she was like amazed that she could, I could buy more than one box of eggs. It's like, right? Something so simple as that.
Take for granted
because she didn't have those kind of choices back home, and she was, just really appreciative, almost naive as to what our country looks like, and the wealth we have, the selection we have, all that kind of stuff. Whereas most women, especially women that are born here, probably wouldn't, give it another thought. There's something to be said for a woman who understands the value of a dollar, a woman who's frugal, as opposed to a woman who will spend whatever you can give her.
Yeah. Well, I think what's like way back in the 80s, you remember Eddie Murphy when he did that comedy bit about like how you could take a woman out of like Africa and she would be really appreciative of you and she would love you and everything. And then within like 6 or 8 months, she was like, what have you done for me? She gets corrupted by the materialistic side. And that we're talking about what, mid 80s, like 85 is when he came up with that. And it's funny because we realize, what it's all about, but that the facility, the quickness with which a woman will go from being that, oh man, I've never had that. I've never been at a grocery store before. You take a woman out of the third world and you bring her into the first world. There's a time between that appreciation for what you have and then taking it for granted, because women see materialism is rooted in women's need for security. It's in that long-term security. It's not so much like I got to have the biggest and the best. It's what do I need to make me secure? And for a woman who is in the third world, it doesn't take too much to make her secure. But when you get up,
Walmart is like, they can't believe it.
Yeah. Well, and then once you get into the first world, and she's been in the first world for 6 to 8 months, then the necessities, like the things that she thought were frivolous or would never be something that she needed, suddenly that becomes necessary for her long-term security. Well, if I don't have granite countertops, then that means that I didn't marry well, or that means my family will look down on me. Or it's like before she was just like, be happy to have a bowl of soup. And now you've got, granite countertops is the standard for security. And I think when we look at we always talk about, alpha seed, beta need. That's the beta need side. That's the long-term security side. Am I going to be safe?
Mhm.
And am I going to be fed? And are my children going to be safe? And are my children going to be fed?
Right.
And the standard for what makes up security is dependent, or it's measured by whatever that person was used to, what you grew up on. And you can say, well, some women will appreciate you for forever, but what happens is there's a certain baseline, there's a certain metric by which women will judge a guy and say, if you can't provide this, then that's not for me. Then I'm not marrying well if I do that. That's why women like we used to have prearranged marriages, or that used to be a thing. You'd sell off your daughter to your best friend, or you'd be like in India, you couldn't marry out of your caste system and those things. That was for long-term security. That was, people are appalled by that thought right now, like that you might have your parents like decide for you who you're going to marry. Well, guess what? Maybe your parents actually know what they're talking about. Maybe they actually have your best interests, and they don't want you to go and live with some scumbag. They want you to actually be happy and have a good family and everything else. I think, like, motive-wise, that sounds good, but all of that, even the want for parents to do that, is based on that security, that long-term security for their daughter, or that long-term prosperity, I guess, for their sons. They very few families want what's worst for their sons and daughters. They want their sons and daughters to live better lives. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? We want our sons and daughters to live better lives than we ourselves lived. Well, okay, that's the motive. Now, women are appalled by that because they want to be the ones who are selecting the guy, then they want to marry for love. But they don't understand that maybe the guy that they're really hot for, and the one that they think that they're in love with, is probably the worst thing in the world for them. And the same applies for guys. Like, guys will get involved with, like, I'm a good example of that. God forbid I married that BPD woman in my mid-20s. I didn't know any better. I thought it was hot and it was great. She was crazy in bed and she was crazy out of bed. Thank God I never proposed. Thank God I never did any of that. But I didn't have any knowledge base to tell me otherwise. Like, this person is crazy. You'll ruin your life if you marry this person. And so what we do, we get, for us to go and say, you shouldn't marry that, you'll ruin your life if you marry this person. That's a set of advice. It's like a bridge too far. We can't say that. We can say, hey, you shouldn't smoke, you shouldn't drink because of your health, you shouldn't, here, I'm going to help you get off the heroin. We're heroes for that. But if I say, if you marry that woman over there, you're going to really screw your life up. Oh, get out of here, Mr. Nosy. What's wrong with you? I'll make my own decisions for me, because I know.
If you're a parent and you do that as the daughter, you're pushing her into his arms.
Yes. One more here, and then we'll close up. Ibo says, last time she asked if I learned my lesson. This makes me so angry. Okay. Lately, she accuses me of having too high standards, that's why I don't want to hire women. Is she trying to tame me or get me out? Probably trying to get you out, if I had to guess. She's not going to tame you. Women don't want to tame guys that they're not already having sex with. And obviously you're not having sex with your HR director here. Most likely she probably wants you out. I think a lot of the direction when it comes to work culture, when women get into positions of authority, they want to push men to the margins. Maybe they don't want to get them rid of them entirely, because they understand that they need them for certain jobs. But when it comes to authority, and it comes to the direction of where that company is going, women believe that women should be the CEOs, women should be the HR directors, women should be all of middle management, women should be the supervisors in every capacity, because they believe honestly that, first of all, that that's their due, but also that is the way to run the company the best, because they don't know any different. They think, well, if we just got women in here, we would all, our stock prices would just shoot through the roof. That's what they're thinking, but they don't understand the mechanics of that. So is she trying to get rid of you? Probably. Yeah, probably.
All right, so let's wrap things up here. And you're going to be on my program Friday at 9:05 a.m. Eastern Time,
Yes.
8:05 Central.
And if you want to find out where the link for that is, you can also look on the side of my sidebar on my blog.
Doing anything else during the week?
Tomorrow, I am going on. I'll post the links for this. I'm going to be recording a God, what is this guy's name? I forget his name. I'm going to be doing a recording of a guy, and he has a blog or a podcast, and he used to be a professional baseball player, and I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. Anyways, look for that. I've got an interview with him tomorrow at about 2:30. It's not a live one. It'll be recorded, but I will make sure that everybody has the links for that one. Also, let's see. We'll be doing this again at the same time, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern on Sundays. And then I will be doing Rule Zero with the guys on Saturday at 11:30. Look on my feed or look on Ryan Stone's or Carl from Black Logic or Rich. Rule Zero. I would love to have you on there too. If you want to, if you wouldn't mind being a guest on there, we'd love to have you.
Because people who haven't heard, what is Rule Zero? Rule
Zero is just us guys. It's a decentralized show that we're doing right now between myself, Rich Cooper, Ryan Stone, Carl from Black Label Logic, and Jonathan from Modern Life Dating. And then I would love to have you on there as well. But we're passing it around for the guys who have their own YouTube channels. Like last Saturday, I was on with Rich and the guys on Rich's channel. Okay. Prior to that, it was Ryan's. I think I'm gonna be the one hosting this weekend. So look on this channel right here, and you'll see. Well, it's gonna be 11:30 Eastern.
That airs what, Saturday?
That is Saturday. So I'll let you know if you want to participate. That'd be great. The other thing, this show also has a sponsor now, and it is Aaron Clary. Thank you, Aaron. I have to give him his drop now. Please go check out Bachelor Pad Economics. That is his book. I am mentioned in it quite a bit, and it's an informative guide for guys who are trying to sort of figure out what to do with their lives and where they want to go and how to live their lives in this day and age. It's kind of like an instruction manual, and I always focus on intersexual dynamics. From that perspective, it's very much red pill, but it will help you like make decisions with regard to education, with regard to doing your finances, investing. It's sort of an instruction guide. So it's called Bachelor Pad Economics. You can look that up on Amazon. So all right, man, that was great. Good show. I will see you again. I'll see you on Friday.
You're out. Thank you.